Hey guys, I've got some new artwork for my personal IP today. This was done in Procreate and I'm still trying to get used to that software. I think I'm improving a little bit, but I still have a little ways to go, but I'm trying to force myself to use it as much as I can just to get used to the tool. I want to share some of my world building here and how I like to go about things in a way that prevents roadblocks and getting stuck in, writer's block or art block, and just keep things progressing in a way that's consistent that I can do on a regular basis. This image started with a really simple thought and ended up spawning all sorts of really cool ideas in my mind just as I was doing this mood sketch. And that's kind of a distillation of how I like to do world building overall. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, please subscribe to my channel if you like what I do. And I hope that this inspires you a bit to maybe pursue some of your own ideas this way. Let's go. This image began with the goal of trying to generate new ideas for environments in my personal IP. And the only thing I had in my mind when starting this image was I was very interested in exploring the idea of this thin slice of really saturated red light. So this is often how I like to world build, by starting with very broad ideas, which I can freely explore, and they lead me to unearth more specific ideas, or at the very least know if it's worth exploring at all. We don't need to have fully fleshed out ideas to start exploring this kind of stuff. Trying to plan out every micro detail and narrative before sketching anything always brings me to just like a grinding halt. If starting a design is contingent on finalizing an idea in writing, then there's all this kind of second guessing that takes place, and the idea never feels strong enough to move forward. I feel like I have to keep fleshing it out and adding details until absolutely everything is solved before I move forward, and it's just not a good way to work for me, and it always ends up just bringing me to kind of like a roadblock. I like to have a very organic approach. Just the seedling of an idea, maybe just like a word or two, gets me to start drawing or painting, and this often just floods my head with new possibilities and also the really important feeling of progression. So once I start drawing and painting, I'll start taking notes based on those new ideas I'm generating and writing and strengthening that idea narratively. And then it's back to drawing, and that's kind of how the process goes. The best part about pursuing your own ideas this way is that you are free to iterate and enrichen your ideas for as long as you want. It's really exciting and a fulfilling process for me. That's kind of exactly what this image is. It's a mood sketch, which I created for my personal project. I had a very, very simple idea in my mind about this really strong slice of red light. Mine is largely a dark fantasy project, but there are elements of Lovecraftian horror as well. Fear of the unknown is a very compelling concept to me, and I wanted to create an environment which could amplify that. This led me to the idea of this chapel divinity plays some role in my project, and its presence is quite ambiguous. Some interpret it quite differently than others, so a creepy chapel seemed like a good subject to explore. It's a place of great importance to some, but in this context, it can also be seen as a place of evil to others. I love the idea of the only respite or shelter to be found being this sort of dreadfully kind of scary place, making the character wonder if they're just better off walking out into the night rather than spending another moment in this real feeling of unease and fear. And it reminds me of the Hobbits, if you've read Lord of the Rings, the books, the Hobbits when they are in the Barrow Downs. And another example is the movie The Ritual, where there's a group of hikers and they find this abandoned cabin in this incredibly remote forest. Keeping with my typical shape language sensibilities, I create quite a vertically elongated design for this chapel, and along with some exaggeration of the rock formations, this injects just enough fantasy, in my opinion, to quite a grounded design overall. And in this case, I feel it also brings a subtle monumentalism, which in this context makes me feel a bit scared, which is the exact feeling that I want to have looking at the image. I'm imagining who may live in this dark tower. Maybe someone still lives there, just sitting in the darkness, or maybe there's just a skeleton up there. And even scarier to imagine is what may have gone on in the hidden depths underneath this structure, if there are secret passageways or hidden chambers. So now, after starting with the most simple brief possible, with just a lighting scenario with no other details in mind, I've organically arrived at this mood sketch, which now raises a ton more questions that I can answer and start fleshing out this environment and the cultures and the people that live here, or if it's abandoned, what is it used for? Are there secret passageways? Who's buried in the graveyard in the back with all those headstones? These are all questions that are raised just from this organic process of letting myself explore freely with drawing and painting based on a very simple brief. Like, you can't get more simple than the brief I gave myself about the slice of red light. And funny enough, the whole reason I started with the idea of red light is because I was looking at a collection of my environment paintings for my project, and I just felt like painting something with the color red and that's it. And it doesn't have to be more complex than that. You can let ideas come organically that way, and not everything has to have such a deep background, lore and developed backstory before you can actually start drawing and painting and developing those ideas.